Welcome to Fan Fave with Katrina. Fan Fave with Katrina. It's time to talk pop culture.
It's a great day because you're listening to Fan Fave. It's been a little bit since we last talked, so I'm so excited to be back, and especially in such a fun time, the holiday season. I hope this month has been nothing short of special for my lovely listeners, and this episode is just going to be a special end of the year 2022 wrap-up episode. We're going to be talking about fan favorite TV shows, movies, music, and moments of the year. Before we get started, let's have a pop recap where I talk all about the pop culture things that I have not been able to stop talking about since the last time I spoke to you all on this podcast. First off, this month I attended all 3 December shows of Saturday Night Live. The first episode on December 3rd featured host Keke Palmer and musical guest SZA. I was so excited about getting to go to this one because it was my first time going to an SNL taping ever. SNL was actually the only late night NBC show, and really any late night show that tapes in New York City, that I had not already been to. And I grew up watching Keke, so I was so excited to get into this one. I did the SNL standby process for my tickets to this one and the other 2 December shows that I attended. You can head to @FanFaveMedia on all social media platforms to hear more about my experience navigating that SNL standby line. For the Keke and SZA episode, I did the dress rehearsal taping, which was pretty cool because we were the first to see everything, including some fun cut sketches that didn't make it to the live taping. Obviously, we were very shocked to see that Keke was pregnant. Everyone in the studio started screaming at that moment, so congratulations to her. SZA also announced her album at this taping, SOS, which is out now. I also attended the live taping of the December 10th episode with hosts Steve Martin and Martin Short and musical guest Brandi Carlile. This was a fun one, you guys. Selena Gomez and Kieran Culkin made cameos, love them both. I was kind of expecting Selena. She kind of had to come because she is in a show with both Steve and Martin, Only Murders in the Building. But I also joked about it to my friends a lot of the time during the week. I have to see Selena. Selena definitely is going to come on Saturday. But I also said that Paul Rudd should make an appearance. And it turned out that I was kind of right about both. As you all probably saw, Selena made a cameo, but Paul Rudd was actually in the audience down on the floor, which was so funny because when my row spotted him, it was during Brandi Carlile's second performance. And everybody started freaking out because we thought he was going to make a cameo too. But I think he was just there to support. And hopefully we will get a Paul Rudd hosted SNL episode in the new year, possibly in promotion for Ant-Man Quantumania, so really soon. The third SNL December show was with Austin Butler and Lizzo, and it actually turned out to be the final show for cast member of 11 seasons, Cecily Strong. We had no idea this was going to be Cecily's last show. Me and my friend were actually in the Ben & Jerry's inside of 30 Rock getting ice cream because it was my birthday, and then I got the email notification from Deadline saying she was leaving, which was 20 minutes before we were going to check in for the live tape. So we were like, she can't be leaving tonight. This is just an early announcement. But she did, and it was a beautiful send-off. This was a pretty solid episode overall, and I thought Austin was a fantastic host. For some reason, him singing was not on my bingo card for the night, but he sang Blue Christmas, and it was everything. Lizzo was also amazing. It was my first time seeing her live. I just loved all of the vibes because this was the official SNL Christmas episode. Now, I also want to talk a little bit quickly about some new Broadway shows I saw this month. First off, & Juliet. I know a lot of people seem to look down on jukebox musicals, but not me. I am a jukebox musical supporter through and through. & Juliet is just so much fun. It takes the classic story of Romeo and Juliet, but poses the question, what if Juliet didn't commit suicide at the end and instead continues to live her life and find love in a new way? & Juliet is filled with music written by pop songwriter Max Martin, so the show has hits from the Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and even Ariana Grande, Katy Perry, The Weeknd. & Juliet also succeeds by not taking itself seriously as a jukebox musical. All of the songs are cleverly inserted into the story to make for a funny yet empowering journey. Overall, I think this show works really well and makes for a great night out on Broadway. I also got to check out Some Like It Hot on Broadway. I did not see the classic film before going to see this, but I was familiar with a bit of the controversy surrounding the representation in the movie. First off, I think the Broadway production of this show tackles the controversy pretty well with the development of the character Daphne. I really loved the music in this one, especially the jazz numbers, and the cast including Christian Borle, J. Harrison G., and Adriana Hicks. They were all phenomenal. Expect a lot of tap dancing in this one, flashy, beautiful costumes, and a fantastically choreographed chase scene in Act 2 that was so much fun to watch. Please go see this one. I was a little bit taken aback by the number of empty seats when I went because this is a show that I really want to see last on Broadway. So now let's get into the topic of today, fan favorite pop culture things of the year. Starting off with music, my favorite albums of the year. I listen to a wide variety of music, and a lot of my most listened isn't even from this year, but I have to say the big trio for me this year is Harry's House by Harry Styles, Midnights by Taylor Swift, and Renaissance by Beyoncé. 3 extremely solid albums that I have had on repeat all year. Harry's House is just a solid album from Harry Styles. I feel like it's his most cohesive album in terms of its sound to date, even if it may not be my absolute favorite out of his discography. Midnights is just fantastic. I feel like it's been a while since we've gotten a real Taylor Swift album. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know we got Evermore and Folklore, but they were just okay to me. It didn't really feel like a full work of Taylor's music, more so a one-off project during the pandemic. And then we also had a re-recording, so I feel like the last real album we got from Taylor was Lover in 2019. So now she's back and better than ever with Midnights, and Midnights is just the perfect blend of some of my favorite Taylor albums, especially 1989 and Reputation. And lastly, but certainly not least, Beyoncé's Renaissance was incredible as expected. So many fun, upbeat songs on there that I've just constantly had on repeat all year since its release. Really hoping that I can hear some of these live next year with that rumored 2023 stadium tour. So we'll see. You guys, you know I love movies, and 2022 had a lot of really great ones. I did an episode a couple months back ranking 2022 movies up through about September, but I'm just going to talk through a handful of my favorites. They are The Fabelmans, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Top Gun Maverick, Elvis, I Want You Back, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and Cha Cha Real Smooth. I feel like this is a pretty diverse set of genres, from superhero to musical biopics, action, drama, rom-com, coming of age. You get it all in this set of 7 top movies of the year. A lot of these I talked about earlier in my ranking of 2022 movies, but there are some newer additions like The Fabelmans, the latest from Steven Spielberg. I just think it's a beautifully made movie that is part coming of age, but also it shows the magic of falling in love with movies and filmmaking. I just absolutely love it. I saw it in the theaters back in November, and I just want to watch it over and over again. I also included Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which I really loved. It was my favorite Marvel movie of the year, not saying it had a lot of competition there, but still it was a really standout superhero film with everything that they did with that. Now, I do admit that I still have a lot of catching up to do with 2022 releases, so some of you may be thinking about different little movies that came out post-September. Maybe that should be in my top 5, top 10. I just kind of dropped the ball with movies that came out in the theater since I am still a college student and the semester got a little bit hectic, so I fell behind on some of the movies that came out in the theaters when I started. So my list isn't as comprehensive as they would be unless those movies wouldn't have broken my top 10 anyways. But this is my list for the year so far now, and I guess I have 2023 to look forward to and catching up on some of those later released movies this year. I know some of them are pretty big Oscar contenders. I'm really looking forward to the Oscars this year. So obviously when the nominations come out, you'll catch me watching Banshees of Inisherin, Tar, all of those, Triangle of Sadness. I will catch up eventually. Some more recent ones that I really liked. I liked Glass Onion. I probably could have talked about this in my pop recap earlier, but it didn't crack my top 10 because I thought that it wasn't as good as Knives Out. Not a bad movie, still very solid. Janelle Monáe crushed it. Those are my thoughts on 2022 movies so far. I'll keep you updated as I continue to watch. Maybe we'll get an Oscars special in the new year. Now let's move into the world of theater. A lot of great new shows premiered on Broadway in 2022. In total, I saw 7 of the new shows, some of which I've already given reviews for either on this episode or on FanFave's social media platforms. But really quickly, for the sake of this 2022 recap episode, I'm going to rank my top 5 of these 7. So in 5th place, I would put The Music Man, starring Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster. I feel like I have to mention their names because they're on the top of the marquee above the name of the show, and that's the reason I actually went. The Music Man is not really my style of musical. I got rush tickets to this show, so they were a lot cheaper than the average ticket price, which is like $300 to $500. It's really a classic musical, but nevertheless, the cast was phenomenal and I loved all of the dancing and the sets. In 4th place, I would put Kimberly Akimbo. It's a really cute musical. I saw it during previews back in November. I really appreciated how unique the story was, and it had some really cool elements like ice skating on stage. It's also very funny. The actors in it almost acted as if they were in a sitcom. Extremely animated, funny one-liners. That was kind of the whole vibe of the show. Obviously, that appealed to me a lot more because I'm a big fan of sitcoms, but if not, it really does lean into that angle if that's not something that you're into. I'd say the only reason this show isn't much higher on my list is because the music was not the most memorable, and the show overall was pretty small in scale in terms of size of the cast and the set, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just my preference. I tend to prefer a big spectacle with my shows. In 3rd place, I have MJ the Musical. This show is just so much fun. I saw it back in February. I obviously went in knowing the majority of the songs, and I think that's what made me enjoy it a lot more. I think when it comes to musicals in general, I'm just always going to prefer a jukebox musical or a musical where I already know a lot of the songs, unless those new songs are very unique or very special, outstanding. So obviously with Michael Jackson, I went in loving the music. I was actually in a Michael Jackson production with my drama club back in high school, so I had even more of a connection to seeing those songs on stage. I saw Rami Payton in the role, who was excellent, and the audience's energy was just so electric. I loved it. In 2nd place, a show that kind of goes against what I just said about Kimberly Akimbo and big spectacles, it's Into the Woods. I saw this back in September with the original Broadway cast that transferred over from the New York City Center production, and while this show was small in scale, the stars in this one truly shined. It felt like a once-in-a-lifetime moment to see all of that talent on stage. It was unbelievable, and I think because there were so many big Broadway names and just fantastic talent on that stage, it kind of took away from the fact that you didn't really need this massive set or big spectacle because they were carrying the show themselves. Into the Woods was also just one of the first musicals I really fell in love with, so it was so amazing to see it come to life on stage. Lastly, in 1st place, and I don't know if this is recency bias because I literally saw this show like 3 weeks ago, but it's & Juliet. Guys, this show is just so much fun, and like I said, I absolutely love jukebox musicals. Moulin Rouge is another favorite of mine. I actually saw that one 5 times this year, but not to compare the two shows, & Juliet actually has way more songs that I knew and loved before seeing the show than Moulin Rouge, so I think that made the first watch of & Juliet be that much better because I already was like, I know these songs, and I was singing along in my head, and that just made the experience so much more fun. I feel like & Juliet is a show that I could watch repeatedly and still feel like it's fresh. I just love it so much.
You're listening to Fan Fave with Katrina. Fan Fave with Katrina.
So moving into television, my favorite new TV shows that premiered this year. 2022 was a big year for television. I'm going to share my top 5 favorite new TV things this year. It was so hard to choose because there were just so many great ones, so I'm just sharing a handful of mine. One of my favorites actually was the first new show I watched this year. It was The After Party on Apple TV. An absolutely fantastic and comedic whodunit with, guess what you guys, an actually satisfying conclusion. It doesn't throw any curveballs or try to trick the audience. This show is a puzzle that you can actually figure out as a viewer. And the concept of this series is just so great. Basically, each character retells the night in their own perspective or narrative. It's fun because each character has their own genre of storytelling. Like there's a cartoon episode and a musical episode, which is my favorite. It also has an all-star cast, and it's been renewed for a second season. So if you haven't checked this one out, you should definitely do so. You have time to catch up for now before the next season comes out. I think they're filming it now or they just wrapped. So hopefully soon we'll be getting the second season because this show was fantastic. Next, I want to talk about another big favorite of mine from the year, Season 2 of The White Lotus. I don't know if this is a popular opinion or not, but I loved Season 2 more than Season 1. First, can I start off by saying The White Lotus, I think ever since the Emmys came out and they got all of those big wins, the audience for The White Lotus grew by so much. And this is coming from somebody that watched the show when it first premiered with Season 1 last summer, and I was watching it weekly, and there was nobody talking about it on social media, and so I had to go on Reddit. That was the only place where people were posting their theories and things. And 2022, this new season, Season 2, it seemed like everybody was watching it weekly, and so it made that so much more fun to watch it because everybody was tweeting their theories, posting memes. It was like a whole community grew out of a new fan base that grew since the Emmys. Season 2, the characters in the show were a lot more multi-dimensional. I feel like with Season 1, you either really hated a character or you liked them, but with Season 2, it was like you never really knew how to feel about things. It made me get even more invested in their story because they weren't too awful or too perfect. They were just like normal people, and people are flawed. Season 2 was a lot more twisty as well. I feel like with Season 1, everything kind of happened as like a circumstance or just like things coming all together and ending up with that conclusion, while this one was like a whole like murder plot. Not to get into like too many spoilers, but like this one was really out there. I did wish the different groups of vacationers interacted with each other more like they did in Season 1. I won't spoil the ending again in case you haven't watched it yet, but I do feel like a little bit cheated because unlike with the after party and the satisfying conclusion where you kind of like could figure out where things were going, with this one, Mike White, the director and writer of this show, literally was doing interviews during the time that this season was airing and saying that he would love to have this certain character come back for Season 3, and that was actually the character that died. So the whole time I was convinced that they would make it out alive because he said that, and I just completely ignored my theories surrounding that character, and that ended up being what happened. So I guess we were being a little bit tricked. I can't wait to see what comes next with this show. It's always a fun time. Where are they going to put the next White Lotus? I want to know soon. Next on my list, Abbott Elementary. This is sitcom gold. This is absolutely one of the best sitcoms that I've ever seen. And sitcoms are my favorite type of show because they're bite-sized and fun comedy that you just can kind of turn on and watch whenever you want. And this one is just so good. It's so funny and well written. And for such a simple concept, if you think about it, they're just elementary school teachers. You wouldn't think that would make this amazing television show, but it does so much. And I love the mockumentary format. Each of the characters just has their own sparkle and flair. It just all works really well. They work really well together. Season 1 was fantastic. Season 2 is off to just as great of a start. And the Season 2, mid-season finale holiday episode that came out a couple of weeks ago, that one had me on the edge of my seat. I just want to see more of the slow burn between Janine and Gregory in 2023. I want more of that. Up next, Only Murders in the Building Season 2. I liked Only Murders Season 1, but Season 2 was way better. I think maybe I feel this way because I watched Season 1 weekly, but for Season 2, I waited and binged it all over 2 or 3 days, and the conclusions of Season 2 just felt so much more satisfying, and it had a lot of cliffhangers, so in terms of my watch experience, it was just a lot more smooth than watching Season 1 and having to wait from week to week. I just didn't like how the first season ended, really. It felt kind of like it came from out of the left field, like figuring out who the killer was impossible, and there weren't enough clues to lead me there. But with season 2, by the finale, I was able to really follow where it was going, and that made it more enjoyable by far. And like I said, I don't know if that's because I watched it all at once versus weekly, so I was able to kind of really pick up on the clues, or if it was just better. But I think even the finale and the way that they like caught the killer was like really funny, especially that plot twist with Steve Martin. They kind of had me for a moment. So I really loved the finale. I cannot wait for season 3 of Only Murders, and maybe that goes hand in hand with one of my only complaints about season 2. I absolutely hate when a show does a time jump, so I'm curious how they're going to go back in season 3 and tell us what went down with Paul Rudd, but obviously that's the mystery of season 3 as well, so they're probably going to go back and fill in the time gaps and tell us what's going on there, so we'll see. They're filming it next year, I believe, so I can't wait. Hopefully that comes out in the summertime maybe again. So we'll see. For the last show I'm going to highlight today, we have to hop into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and talk about Moon Knight. Moon Knight is actually the last Phase 4 Marvel series that I watched in its entirety. I never finished Miss Marvel and She-Hulk, so yeah, I know I talked about this before. Still have not gone back and finished it. Maybe one day, just wasn't this year. But Moon Knight was so good, and I think it started really well, and episodes 4 and 5 I wanted to highlight specifically as really strong episodes. Overall, it was just such a fun watch, and a breath of fresh air. Was definitely something that was unique to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Oscar Isaac was fantastic in this show, as usual, and I cannot wait to see more of this character, hopefully sometime soon. I know that's been like a big critique of Marvel Studios lately, is introducing a lot of different characters, and the audience not really being able to see how they're going to tie into the bigger picture, but I trust Kevin Feige. I think they've got it all under control and planned, so hopefully we'll see more of Moon Knight soon. Now, there were a lot of crazy things that happened this year in the world of pop culture. I'm just going to talk really quickly about what I think were the most memorable, whether they're good or they're bad, and some of my most favorite pop culture things that I just want to highlight from the year. First off, very bad. The Oscars slap. Like, we have to talk about it. It was one of the biggest pop culture moments of the year. And I remember, like, on social media, like, people were getting so tired of hearing about it, like, weeks after. But, like, looking back, like, that's something that like we're just going to talk about for years. Like the same way that we bring up Kanye and Taylor at the VMAs, that was absolutely crazy. I don't know like what side people are on. We're not going to debate it, but I'm really curious how the Oscars come back. If I had to make a prediction, I predict that the Oscars are going to see a high rise in ratings and people viewing it next year. Personally, in general, I love watching the Oscars, and I cannot wait to see like the new year and the new Oscars. This was like the first year, 2022, that I did like a whole marathon beforehand of all the Best Picture nominees and also some of the other categories as well. And so I was like really invested in this show, and I was at like a whole watch party with my dorm at college at NYU. And so everybody was kind of watching it together and trying to predict what was going to happen. Obviously, I predict correctly the Best Picture winner, which was Coda. Absolutely love that movie. Would have been in my rankings, but it actually came out last year in 2021, not this year, even though it got a lot of its like awards and success this year. Overall, like that was really crazy, and I just feel like it was so shocking. Like when we were watching it live at the watch party, we thought it was staged, you know, like they do different bits at Oscars, and it was kind of like slow. I don't think it was the strongest set of hosts this year, so I thought they were just doing any and everything to make it more entertaining, but ultimately things fell apart, and we're going to always be talking about the Oscars slap of 2022. Next, I want to talk about something that might be a little bit more personal to me, but I feel like this was the year of Harry Styles. Like, we had Harry's House come out this year, which I talked about a little bit earlier, and then we had his Love on Tour residencies. Obviously, he did 15 shows in New York City, 5 in Chicago, 2 in Toronto, 5 in, I believe, Austin, Texas, or Dallas, somewhere in Texas. Sorry, Texas. 5 down there, and then he technically did only 13 in Los Angeles because 2 got postponed till next year, but 15 in LA, and he's just absolutely killing it. I went to 3 of the shows at Madison Square Garden during the New York City residency, so that was one of the highlights of my year. I also saw him at his one night only concert in UBS Arena up in New York as well. That was like the album release party the day that Harry's House came out. So it's just a big year for him. And I'm talking about the positives, but let's kind of move a little bit into the negative, because another big pop culture moment of this year was Don't Worry, Darling, and all of the drama that happened with that. I think that with all of the different like movies that I've seen come out, like that had to be one of the craziest press tours, press moments of all movies. Like, I don't know, you let me know if you know of a crazy like moment that happened during press tours of another movie, but this was just crazy. Like, I need a documentary of what happened behind the scenes of Don't Worry, Darling and the production of it. Like, we will never know. All we know is Harry Styles did not spit on Chris Pine. So we'll just have to see, like, I mean, the overall opinions of the movie, like, they were mixed. I don't think they needed a lot of like good press, bad press. Like, people were going to see it regardless. So the fact that they got that much bad press was really unfortunate, because I do think that it clouded the reputation of the movie for a lot of people, even though it was not that bad of a movie. Broadway, let's talk about Broadway. With Funny Girl, Lea Michele, Beanie, that whole fiasco that went down over the summer with Beanie leaving the production early and Lea Michele stepping in, which was pretty controversial, but I also think it's a little bit funny because for the Glee fans out there, this is exactly what her character did in Glee. She stepped up and she became Fanny Bryce in Funny Girl. So it's like Glee is becoming real life. Like, Lea Michele is now Funny Girl. And I just think that's hilarious. No, I have not seen her in the role just yet because those ticket prices skyrocketed when she joined the production. So unless I get a little lottery ticket or standing room only or some sort of discount, I'm not going. But hopefully in the new year, I might get to see her in that role. Now, I'm about to say something that we probably all forgot about now. It's Wordle. Who plays that game still? I mean, it was so fun at first, and I think that the New York Times bought it, and after like they bought it and it became a part of their website, everybody kind of stopped playing it. Like, it used to trend every day with everyone like tweeting like their little like green and yellow squares, and then it also became like a whole meme. I really enjoyed doing it. I was like an intern for The Tonight Show at the time, and so I would always have to do a recap of the trends, and so I just remember like discovering it, like, why is this trending every single day? And then I started playing it, and I got like addicted to playing it every single day, and I was always awful at it. But then when the New York Times bought it, I feel like it got a lot more difficult. So it just kind of fell off, which is unfortunate. I think this is a little bit more of a generalized thing, but I also just loved all of the different like memes and viral moments on social media of the year. Specifically, one thing that I always love is when everybody is watching the same like show or movie weekly together. So if you remember like Euphoria Sundays, Succession Sundays, then White Lotus Sundays, like everybody live tweeting the same shows every week. Always so much fun. I also found like all of the memes about like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness to be hilarious. Like, we had so many like crazy theories leading up to that coming out, just for it to be so incorrect. Like, who didn't walk out of that theater a little bit disappointed? I low-key like on purpose spoiled the movie for myself so that I could shield myself from a little bit of that disappointment, but I just wish it was more multiverse in that multiverse movie. Now, obviously, there's a lot of like really crazy pop culture things that happened this year, but I'm just going to end on one that happened very recently, and it is the rise of Nepo babies, nepotism babies. I think for me, like, a lot of people don't really talk about nepotism babies and like the whole like cycle of like famous actors, actresses, musicians, and then they have kids and their kids grow up and become famous actors, actresses, and musicians, or at least try to. And that's kind of like what nepotism is. But this year, Vulture dropped this very hilarious out-of-pocket article that came out like 2 weeks ago, and it's been like trending nonstop because they basically like came up with this whole list of all of the big nepotism babies that are out there right now. And I guess a lot of them were like shockers to people. I knew about most of them pretty much, but that's because I'm like constantly following in the industry. But I just think it's so funny, especially when they started to like respond like very angry about how like upset they were. It's just like really crazy the reaction to that article. And I feel like it's not bad if you're like super talented as well. Like you just grew up in the industry. But like I guess the problem that a lot of people have with it is mainly the fact that they tend to have like this sort of privilege where other people are kind of like struggling and working because they don't have those connections. And it's really bad when those people that do have those connections because of their parents don't acknowledge them and instead still try to say they're self-made when obviously like your mother connected you to the producer, or like you got your first acting role when you were 10 because your father wrote the movie. And so I think that like there's nothing wrong with it if you have that talent, but just making sure that you acknowledge it as well. Overall, guys, I don't think it's that serious. Like all of the different Twitter fights that have happened over the past 2 weeks regarding this subject, let's just all relax a little bit. I think that I'm just going to end on the pop culture moments with a little bit of a positive pop culture moment. And I may not have impacted the whole world of pop culture, but you know, a very special podcast related to pop culture launched in 2022. And maybe it's the one that you're listening to right now. Fan Fave Media, we got our start in 2022 on August 1st. And I'm just so glad that you all are here listening to me. I'm so grateful to be able to share my stories, share my opinions, have you all on the show, and have you all share your stories, share your opinions. I'm really thankful for everybody that has come on the show, shared and talked about their favorite things, and I just cannot wait to see what's in store for the new year. And while we're talking about what's in store for the new year, I want to discuss specifically what I'm looking forward to. Some things may be surprises next year, but some things we already know to look forward to, like new seasons of shows that I mentioned already in this episode, and new movie releases. Like some of my most anticipated new movies of the year are probably Ant-Man Quantumania, obviously, The Marvels, Greta Gerwig's Barbie, Dune Part 2, The Little Mermaid, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and they can go ahead and give me Part 2 next year too. I don't like the whole wait in between movies when they like split them into 2 parts, but you know, I'll be patient. And also Wonka. Can't wait to see Timothée Chalamet as Wonka. I'm also really looking forward to big tours from music artists like Taylor Swift, who also, that was a big pop culture moment of the year, that massive Ticketmaster fiasco that went down like last month. I was also a victim of that scandal. I did not get tickets through there, but I had a lovely friend, shout out to Caitlin, who actually was able to find me a ticket. So I will be seeing Taylor at MetLife next year, and I'm so excited for that. In the theater world, I really cannot wait to see Back to the Future on Broadway and Once Upon a One More Time, the Britney Spears musical. Overall, I'm really looking forward to everything that's to come in the pop culture world in the new year. Hopefully more good things than bad. And I'm really just looking forward to ushering in a new era of Fan Fave with all of you. All new fun things in store that I already have, and some really exciting things lined up that I can't wait to launch for you all. I wish you a happy new year and the best for 2023. I'm Katrina. Thank you for listening to Fan Fave.